Right, thank you, Ash. And first of all, I have posted a link up on the chat. As they always say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So I am actually going to take a leave from the National Volunteerism and Philanthropy Center, which suggests ways in which we could build communities under their tagline, building a city of good. Well, thank you, Ash, for introducing me as a nature guide. Honestly, over the last 15 years, perhaps, I'm terrible with
Time.
dates, actually, and time, exactly. So whenever people ask me, oh, no, how long have you been together with Triffin? I said, I can't remember.
because you look like you're in your 20s all the time.
Yes, thank you. That's purely genetics. Nothing. And being outdoors, yes. And also actually being able to delete the words job, career, profession throughout much of my life. I've never applied for a job, but maybe that could be part of another speech that I think many people are interested to know. Anyway, coming back to today's topic, I would again say that ever since I was in pre-primary school, I have been wearing one uniform or another up to today. So each uniform would have represented a community that I am part of. And so if you are looking at the website, it suggests that all of us are will probably be part of a certain community, be it your family group, be it your neighborhood, which is these organic organizations or committees that you're part of, or it could be intentional, like when you guys started a new vision for what a Toastmasters club could be. And in my case, through my experience being a scout for 10 years, as I mentioned, for me, one of the things that has carried on in my life is to try to live out the motto of the Scout movement. I'm not sure how many of you are members of fellow brothers and sister Scouts and guides. If you are, you could help me out. Do you all remember what is the Scout motto?
Be prepared.
That's right. And every day I have to remind myself to be prepared. And just for this speech alone, I don't think I did that well. So I'm actually staying over at a friend's place and having dinner with the father. And because actually I didn't want to, for example, waste any food, just like Anna, I actually ate more than I should. So I'm actually experiencing some food coma. So please excuse me if I don't sound coherent. And I also didn't get to prepare any slides. So I thought perhaps that PowerPoint, or rather that link would help you to review what I'm going to be sharing today. But being prepared actually would help us anticipate the challenges ahead of us and the risks. So at this point, I'm guided by the fact that when scientists try to understand, for example, what are the top 10 planetary risks that causes human extinction, for example, very few of us, including myself, would imagine that the next asteroid strike may be coming. It's not a matter of will it come, but it's just a matter of when will it come. So if we want to prevent ourselves from becoming the next set of dinosaurs, at some point in time, we may still need some eyeballs on that, despite the fact that the climate crisis is also upon us, over and on top the COVID pandemic as well. Yeah. Be prepared. That's the only thing that would allow us to mitigate critical risks to the planet. And the final farewell message of the founder of the Scout movement, Lord Baden-Powell, in anticipating his departure from this world and following on his own motto, or perhaps the motto of the movement that he started, actually wrote a farewell letter to his fellow scouts. And from that letter, I learned one important suggestion that he had for fellow scouts. And he suggested that we should try to leave this world a better place than we first found it. And that has been my abiding principle throughout all the things that I do. So that when I leave this world, I hope that I'll leave behind a place where communities can still thrive, can be prosperous, can be safe, and happy at all times. The next point that I would like to touch upon is probably based on the second page of that same website, and it actually talks about 8 components, and I would have to go through them very briefly because I know that I'm supposed to watch the time, and in those aspects of it, it talks about how we could perhaps prevent or build communities. Now, one of the things I learned about building communities is that usually communities are formed when they share certain habits, certain rituals. For example, not only was I part of the scouting movement, we had secret handshakes, but there was another uniform group with another different handshake as well. So this actually builds coming together, sharing things. And in fact, the only reason that I like to joke about me being interested to join Toastmasters was just because of Lily's food. So food actually brings people together quite often in Singapore. And I think for want of healthier, better food, why not? Why not? You know, that's one of the best ways and good ways of bringing people together. So forming a culture of best practices that is defined by the values, common values that bind us together is important. I will also suggest that at times we should also not have the holier than thou mentality. There was a time when someone shared with me that, oh, I went for a bird watching trip, and the first thing I was told by the trip leader was, you are wearing the wrong attire. You are standing out like a sore thumb in red, and you're scaring all the birds away. So this friend of mine eventually was turned off and never came back to another bird watching trip. In fact, she became one of our leading experts in marine conservation. Yeah. The next thing I would like to suggest also is that it is important to stay true to your vision and your values. And this maybe, it will take time, of course. In corporate speak, they talk about having what's known as a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? Because this sort of keeps everyone on the same page and aligned to the same vision of what you imagine the world will be like. For example, with a small little community that I've started to try to understand the landscape of food in Singapore, we imagine it as a fair and inclusive circular food system for all in a collective. And in fact, one of our founding members felt that we struggle with the meaning of the word collectivism, primarily because it's something that we are not so used to. This is kind of a very socialist term. And someone also suggested to me that in order to build trust, we will actually need to be able to communicate with an authentic meaning we need to be able to listen well, and that is what I think has been alluded to some of what some of you have been sharing about. So with that, I would like to end my sharing. And I think I've exceeded my time. Thank you so much for having me, Ash and Ihan especially, because I actually volunteered to do this because I couldn't do it the last time. Thank you once again.
Thanks, Hang Chong. Yes, appreciate your sharing your thoughts around your experience with communities like the Scouts. I think that was really relevant, and your sharing of your experience setting up Foodscape Collective. And in many ways, I think we aspire to create a flat organization where everybody has an equal stake, and one where everybody has the equal opportunity to lead. So I think now we've got maybe 10 minutes to take some questions around your experience here. And maybe if I may kick the ball rolling, could you tell us your experience in Foodscape Collective in terms of encouraging everyone that this organization is owned and it's where everyone has an equal stake, equal involvement, and so everyone has an equal opportunity to lead? Because I ask this because in a typical Asian model, most people are more familiar with a hierarchical structure, and they look to the exco to make decisions, or they look to the founder to drive the movement. But really what yeah, so long question short. Tell us about your experience trying to foster this collective model.
Yeah, thank you, Ash, for that question. I think in all honesty, it's still very much a work in progress. So while we had 4 friends who were brought together to start this, if you were to ask Trey Fen, she will tell you that all 4 of us have different interests insofar as food is concerned. For example, I'll be interested in the idea of food security. She's interested in stories, just like Anna is. Hui Ying was interested in, her background was in psychology and geography. And that's why we were trying to understand the landscape of food. Now, the 4th member, she was actually interested in the relationship between food and health, because the health of our gut, and we're learning more about it, the health of humans, the health of the planet is so interconnected right now. So then, in fact, between the 4 of us, one of us, Susanna, actually left quite early on because she had other priorities in life. And so I'll suggest to you that when you try to form communities, you will expect people to come and go all the time. That's to be expected. No one should be deemed to be irreplaceable, but yet there should be a structured way in which you actually onboard someone, and also a structured way in which someone can feel ready to leave and not be obliged to stay on or stick it on, because then you will feel burnt out especially. And I'll share this from my personal experience, because I'm someone who's fairly persistent. When I join something, I never leave, right? And actually, I'm holding on to a adopted, what I call an orphan. So I actually joined a green group, literally, before the Nature Society. It was called Jalan Hijau, started by someone else. Eventually, she left within the first few years and started a new family. I took it on, and I held this baby, abandoned baby, for quite a while, until the Nature Society decided, oh, let's try and turn it into a youth group, right? And then someone else came in. He took it on for a while, but then he had to go for further on studies. And so I took it back on again. And I'm still holding on to this baby, and still dormant at this point. But why I didn't give it up? It's because I felt that it still had a purpose. Yeah. But that's a different story altogether. But what two things from there. Number one, leadership succession is important, or succession of people, of roles. And number two, insofar as I've seen, of course, examples of what we call the founder effect. There's a term for it, where the founder just stays on for too long. So within us, we actually also had a conversation of how do we describe ourselves. So we never actually describe ourselves, the four of us, as founders. We have a problem calling ourselves co-founders. And so we eventually settled on the term founding member. But even then, because out of the four, three have left. So I'm actually left by myself with another supposed orphan. And thankfully, one of our members stepped up, and she, Vivian, and myself, we are holding the fort, so to speak, to keep the collective together, especially when there's so many good things that are happening to us, the opportunities that we have been able to tap on. And so at the moment, we have a temporary title, so to speak, as guardians of the collective. Guardians.
Like guardians of the universe, huh?
Yeah, so I will put it to you that yes, if you think back to, I think, what Lao Tzu said, he said that the best leader is actually someone who nobody knows who that person is, because it will be a situation where people actually think that they're actually doing it for themselves. Yeah, leading it from behind. Of course, there are other concepts like servant leadership, right? I mean, because I come from, I was in a church for a while, so I understand the concepts of discipling, coming together and bonding, and also learning by serving, and that's important too, because we all have human egos, and if the human ego becomes too strong and great, usually it leads to a downfall. And I've seen that very often, or I won't say very often, but that has led to huge disruptions in the nature society, so much so that people leave from other groups. Sometimes it's good to leave, actually, it's not a bad thing. But then dirty laundry became washed in public. At one time, it got so embarrassing that one of our patrons, because she was stuck between two difficult situations, she actually had to leave us, within a nature society. And for us in the collective, I can honestly say that the other members left because of interpersonal conflict. Yeah. So how do we actually address that? I think this is where conflict management becomes very important. Very important. And this, I think, on reflection right now, Ash, I think it becomes important because people are so passionate about what they want to do, and when the passions are inflamed in the wrong way, and I think actually someone suggested, I think he was maybe Gerard E. He suggests, I'm someone who's really into volunteerism. He suggested that it's actually harder to manage volunteers compared to paid staff, because the paid staff has defined job scope. You either do well or you are asked to leave. Very simple. But for a volunteer, unless you are as strict as that, they have no qualms saying their piece, right? Yes. Yeah. So then it becomes quite difficult to handle, especially if they have gotten themselves into a so-called position of authority. Yeah, either through elections, like you said. That's my short answer to you. I hope that answers some aspects of what you have asked me about. Building consensus, I think, is important, but then we need to lay the ground rules. Whether are we going through a voting process? But if we wait until everyone votes, then the planet will be dead, right? Yeah. How do we? So that's the dialect. There needs to be a trade-off. Do you say that, okay, if you don't violently oppose, we'll just move on, right? Because we can't wait and keep talking. Yeah. We need to do. And just like the sentiment some of you all shared, I'm someone who also would rather let my walking do the talk.
Yeah. No, I think, thank you for that very honest answers, because I think there's no silver bullet or there's no perfect way, especially as we're trying to craft a somewhat very new way of organizing ourselves. And I think we are very attracted to this distributed leadership model, but while it may look nice and rosy from a certain angle, it comes with many challenges, real challenges of egos, real challenges of people coming, people going, sustaining the work. Yeah. So yeah, hearing you share, I think that's a good reminder, grounding reminder. Okay, is there anyone with any questions for Hang Chong? Maybe we got time for one more. I think Hang Chong is in the mood of telling it candidly as it is. So, and yeah, he's had his share. Yes, Stephen.
Anjong, I was wondering if you can share a little bit with, with all the different interest groups that you've been in, and certainly there will be times where there are some initiatives that you would like to take off, and that will involve some raising of some funds, and how do you all go about doing this to stay focused as well as to get sufficient funding almost every time when you want to do something.
So you're asking for their financial
how do they go about,
sustainability, how they go get money, is it?
Yeah, is it like ad hoc, or okay, there's a so-called a membership, so that there'll be some reserves being put aside, then the periodic activities will perhaps not be so trying to say, oh, next month I don't know what's going to happen, and we're low on funding and all that.
Yeah. So your advice for funding.
Right. Thank you, Stephen, for that question. But before I get to that, I think I'd just like to raise one point based on the last question. I think that's something that I'm very thankful that Han, and I think Vivian have been trying to lead this process of understanding how we can communicate better through the concept of non-violent communication. Yeah, although I can't explain what is it, I'm very attracted to that idea. So I really like to learn more. And I would suggest that this may be one of the pathways for better conversations without conflict. Yeah, without conflict. So, but coming back to your question, Stephen, I would put it to you that just taking a leaf from my own personal example, as I mentioned, I've never, I don't know whether I told you all before, but I've never had to apply for a job in my life. Never. It's always been people asking me to work for them. Maybe they see something in me that I never did. So that leads me to the point that when you have good ideas and you know how to pitch them, there will never be lack of resources that will aggregate around good ideas. Yeah, that's my short answer to you. And well, and the other point I think we need to also probably be cognizant about is that depending on the source of funding, and for biodiversity, for example, the most famous series of books about nature, I don't know whether you are familiar, the small little books, is actually sponsored by one of our major oil companies. Yeah, that's the British Petroleum, or BP guides. In fact, some of the publications of Nature Society are also sponsored by oil companies. So what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say that at some point, at least in this day and age, people become more aware about the ethical issues between receiving this type of money. You see many examples around the world, whether it's the British Museum, Greenpeace, for example, draws a very, very clear line. Yeah, they do not accept any form of sponsorship so that they can be totally unbiased. So I would just suggest that money is only one way, one form of resource. Ultimately, it's about whether the members that you have are actually living well. Actually, if you can support them either emotionally, mentally, physically, they live well. And if they live well by personal example, when they go out to their communities, people would see them quite differently, right? They will say, "Hey, Hang Chong, you look healthy. You look young. What's your panacea? I want to learn from you," right? So I mean, I'll take this leaf from maybe certain Christians, right? They call it, what do they call it? They call it marketplace evangelism, right? It's not about telling the world that the world is fallen, but it's about showing the example out there. Yeah. So it is by convoluted explanation of why I think money shouldn't be a worry, shouldn't be a first worry.
Well, that's a very enlightened way of saying it. Most of us are stuck with a lot of money worries. But thank you for that answer. Okay, so thanks Hang Chong for giving us your sharing and helping us understand some of the real challenges when it comes to creating a new community. All right, I would now like to move to the next part. I think Xavier, are you still on the line, or we've actually scheduled you to do some sharing, but I would. Hi, Xavier. Do you have something to share, or did I already get you to speak earlier and it's covered?
Well, I had prepared a speech of about 30 minutes with 25 slides, but maybe I give you a shorter version for it.
Go for it. Okay.
All right. Sorry, just kidding.
Okay, so I'd like to invite Xavier to share his experience with Mother Earth Toastmasters and his hopes for us into Mother Earth 2.0. Xavier, you've got 2 to 3 minutes, all right? Go for it.
Thank you, Ash. Appreciate it. So everybody, I'll continue a little bit from my introduction. I did join Mother Earth Toastmaster, first as a Toastmasters club because I wanted to really hone on my public speaking skills. That was my objective. And what I got out of my participation to the club is a lot more. I got a lot of spirit. I got the sense of community. I got a lot of sharing and learnings, and I really enjoyed a lot of the creative speeches. And of course, there was Lily's food, which is always a plus. Now, the sharing and the spirit I got came both from the leadership. When I joined, Ash was the president, and then Irene took over, and finally Ihan, but also all the members of the club, including some people who were recurring guests, I guess you would say, not quite members on the club, but who really participated and enjoyed the meetings. The one thing that I was missing at the club, however, was really some of the action. And I realize now that while I felt it was because maybe I just wasn't, didn't have the competency or the contacts or whatever, I do realize there was something in the charter of the club that kind of restricted us a little bit. So you can imagine I'm very excited about Mother Earth 2.0. Now, as I said, one of the things I'm going to do is to take my speeches outside of this group so that I can talk about Mother Earth to other people. And I really believe they need to hear it a lot more than you do who are here. In terms of my hope for Mother Earth 2.0, I just want to share a few with you. I really hope that we can find a way to get into action, making decision and acting on it quite fast and quite seamlessly as a group, as a community. I also hope that we can find a way to do impactful things. I don't want to guess what the future is like, but I'm really hoping that we will have an impact. For me, that's very important. And I want to share with you, there's 3 areas that are very important to me where I will be ready to really invest a lot of energy to help. The first one is very practical things like, cleaning up beaches or something like this. It's something that I believe, not because you're going to save the ocean by cleaning one beach, but because doing a practical action really puts you in the spirit of serving and having an impact. I believe that's very important. The second is education. I think that we can help educate other people, whether it's through real education or mentoring other people outside on Mother Earth and what they should be doing and what is important. I think that's also a very practical impact we can have. And the third one, which could be a surprise to some people, is finance. Not because I love money, but because I'm good at it. This is actually my job. And I have this really strong feeling that if we could find a way to get people who have money to fund projects that are making financial sense and are helping Mother Earth, that would be a massive driver for improvement. And that would solve a lot of things that you guys just talked about, as a matter of fact, 5 minutes ago. So these are really my hopes and dreams, that we can take actions, we can be impactful, and that I can participate by using the things that are close to my heart. So thank you.